it's important, it's very important that we, as people, carve out occasions where we recognize people who are worthy of honor. That's good for us. That we carve out times when we recognize characteristics or achievements and we say, okay, this is honorable. And we carve it out, we focus, we set it aside, say this is worthy of honor. It does something for us. It's good for us. These are good examples for us to follow. For example, tomorrow's Veterans Day, right? It had already been mentioned. And what do? We set aside a day in our country to say, here are people who are worthy of honor. So, okay, this morning, if you're here, right, you're a veteran, men and women, there's a lot of us here, a lot of you here at Grace. Why don't you stand? If you're a veteran, well, I want you to stand and look around at these folks. That's right. Stand up. There you go. Wow. So this is good for us. These are people who have given their lives away for us. And we go, we need to honor that. A couple of weeks ago, I was gone for most of the week, and I'm on a board of trustees at a college in Indiana, Grace College is seminary. And it's our Grace Brethren school, all right? It's real tempting not to do a commercial right here. They do a tremendous job. We have students that are out there now from Grace, and enrollment's good, and it's having a real impact on people's lives. So send your kids to Grace, all right? All right. There, commercial's over. But when we were out there, part of what was happening was there's the inauguration of a new president. We just gone through the transition of the presidency. And it was really cool because the new president wanted to make sure, as a part of the festivities, that there was honor and recognition given, and that we all learned from all the past presidents at Grace, over 75 years of history. 3 of them are still living, and so they were there, and then there was a whole video thing done about each president and what they brought to the institution over these 75 years, and that we honored the leaders of that school, people who are worthy of honor. That's good. You know, we have Mother's Day and Father's Day. I mean, we set aside Father's Day. You know, Dad gets up every day, busts it out, goes to work, comes home, and, you know, bills to pay, and Dad, you got $20? Dad, you got this? Dad, it's broken, the faucet's leaking, whatever. And Dad just like, okay, Dad, we're going to the game, going to it. And Dad, you know, Dads are amazing, you know, and they're faithfully serving. You set this aside and recognize that, honor it. Mother's Day. You know, Mom goes up, Mom. You know, Mom's going to go, if I hear that one more time, you know. And they give and they serve and they drive them to school and they drive them to practice, and there's laundry, and it's just being a mom, you know, and they're nurturing and changing another diaper, really? And so you stop and you go, no, we need to honor this because this is worthy of honor. Now, there's a healthy recognition that happens there of people worthy of honor because it evokes things in us like gratitude, right? This is good for us. We are grateful. Wow, look at who God has put into our lives. It also does something else for us, and it's this. When we recognize people who are worthy of honor, it causes us to ask ourselves the question, well, what do I want to be when I grow up? Right? What do I want to be like when I grow up? Because lives that are honorable, it stirs in us, what's going on in me? What kind of life am I going to live? And we ask the question, who do you want to be when you grow up? Now, sometimes we honor people that we shouldn't, right? In our culture, that happens. So to sort this thing out, you know, sometimes people are recognized for characteristics that are less than honorable. Sometimes we can slip, this whole thing about recognizing people worthy of honor can slip into kind of this twisted fan club mentality, which is not healthy. Eugene Peterson wrote something very insightful, I thought, about some of this. He said fan clubs encourage secondhand living through pictures and memorabilia, autographs, and tourist visits. We associate with someone whose life we think is more exciting and glamorous than our own. We find diversion from our own humdrum existence by riding on the coattails of someone exotic. Now, that's not what we're talking about, okay? That's a secondhand living that you kind of draft off of. A healthy way of approaching people worthy of honor recognizes that it causes something in us to say, wow, that's what I'd like to be like when I grow up, you know? Billy Graham is in the news a lot these days. And the guy's amazing. He's 95 years old. And there's a passion that he has for this country. And in his heart, it was like, one more time, maybe can I get the good news of Jesus Christ, Hope of America it's called, to them one more time. One more time. It's like amazing. And as the media talks about this guy, what are they talking about? They're talking about the fact that here's a preacher who's lived 95 years without scandal. No sexual scandals, no financial scandals. The guy's amazing. He's an amazing thing that he's been this faithful this long and this passionate about the gospel. All kinds of stories come out. He would not get on an elevator by himself. He wouldn't do it. There would be other men with him, whatever. Every time he traveled, he didn't want to get on an elevator with another woman, and then scandals break out, temptations, elevator opens, there's Billy Graham, and and pictures taken. He went out of his way to say, I don't want anything distracting from the gospel of Jesus Christ and getting people to the cross. Unbelievable. I want to be like this when I grow up. I want to be like this guy when I grow up. Now, Paul is writing a letter to some people in Philippi. And in the middle of this letter, he just stops and he goes, you know what? There's two people that I want you guys to recognize as these were men in this case, who are worthy of honor. And I want to look at these guys' lives this morning because Paul points them out and we can learn from them. So turn to Philippians chapter 2. And Paul's saying, everything I'm talking about, these are living examples. Honor people like this. Again, as you turn to Philippians chapter 2, page 1162 in the Bible in the rack in front of you. Paul's in prison in Rome, remember? He's there because he was talking to people about Jesus. He's doing what Billy Graham did. It just landed Paul in jail. He appeals his case to Caesar. He wasn't getting a fair trial. He thought maybe he would with Caesar, and he hopes that he will. He would really hear it out. It might not. He could end up with his head gone, all right? He thinks it's going to go well, but here he is in Rome. Now, the people in Philippi, he'd share the gospel with them. They'd come to Christ, formed a church. They heard about Paul's needs, and they sent a gift to him to meet his needs while in prison. Paul receives that gift, and he's sending this thank you note, basically, back to them, saying, I really appreciate that. But in this thank you note, he's just sharing his heart about how to live. And we've called this THANKSliving, all right? So let's look at the first person that Paul highlights. Verse 19, Philippians chapter 2. I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon, that I also may be cheered when I receive news about you. I have no one else like him who takes a genuine interest in your welfare. For everyone looks out for his own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. But you know that Timothy has proved himself because as a son with his father, he served with me in the work of the gospel. I hope, therefore, to send him as soon as I see how things go with me. And I am confident in the Lord that I myself will come soon. Timothy's the first person that Paul says, here's somebody worthy of honor. And what was a special characteristic about Timothy? Here's what it was. He had a genuine interest in the spiritual welfare of other people. That's what Paul points to. He had a genuine interest in the spiritual welfare of other people. Now, apparently that was rare. You know, Paul writes in verse 20, I have no one else like him who takes a genuine interest in your spiritual welfare. For everyone looks out for his own interests and not those of Jesus Christ. So here's Paul in Rome, and some people were coming to Christ in Rome, and there were some Christians in Rome, but I don't know, they were just pretty wrapped up in life in Rome. And Paul's saying, you know, I'm looking around, and I can't find anybody who has a general interest, you guys, in Philippi. I don't know, Rome was pretty exciting, right? Life in Rome was busy. They had season tickets to the Colosseum. They had to get their kids to gladiator practice. You know, there's a lot going on. I mean, it's Rome, right? And there wasn't much else on their radar there in Rome outside of their own interests. And Paul's looking around going, man, I need to send somebody back there. And Timothy's it. You know, Timothy's the guy. It's so funny, earlier Paul had said in chapter 2, just earlier in chapter 2 in verse 4, he's talking about getting along with other people, and each of you should look not only at your own interests, but also the interests of others. Your attitude should be the same as that of Christ. And Paul's basically looking at Timothy and saying, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. He's proven himself. Timothy was a proven individual. Verse 22, you know that Timothy has proved himself because as a son with his father, he served with me in the work of the gospel. So Paul says, look, we're going to stop a second. Let's set aside a holiday for guys like Timothy, for men and women like Timothy. Now, I want to each person, there'll be two that Paul highlights, and I want to ask ourselves a couple questions to apply this, to drive this home in our own hearts and minds from this guy's life. And the first one is this. Do your future plans have a footnote? Now, you might wonder, what in the world is that doing connecting with? Just write it down, and hopefully it's all going to make sense in about 3 minutes. What do your future plans have a footnote? Here's the deal. If you're somebody, something stirs in you and say, you know what, when I grow up, I want to be like Timothy. I want to be a person who really has a genuine interest in the spiritual welfare of others. If you start to think that way, you're going to confront very quickly something, and it's this. You know what? This could really mess up my schedule. This could really mess up my plans. This could really mess up my life. It's interesting how Paul saw some of these things. In verse 19, he says, I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon. In verse 23, I hope, therefore, to send him as soon as I see how things go with me. Paul wasn't real sure about his future, remember? He didn't know how this trial was really going to come out. He might be dead. He might be released. He thought, he had a hunch that things were going to go well, but he just didn't know for sure. And so he says, look, I hope in the Lord. It's kind of like, look, if the Lord wills, I'm making plans. Timothy's the guy. I hope to send him to you soon. And I'm going to send him as soon as I find out for sure what's happening with my deal here. And once I do, then I can send word with Timothy. I mean, if I'm going to die, I'll tell Timothy, hey, they're cutting my head off a week from Tuesday, and he can go back and tell you guys that. If I'm going to be released, he'll tell you that, and then I hope to get with you soon. So I hope in the Lord. Do you see the context of all this? Paul, Timothy, if you're going to be someone who has a genuine interest in the spiritual welfare of others, you just have to hold your schedule and life loosely. See, God is moving. The reason is God is moving. You know, right now, God is moving in the hearts and lives of people who sit around you right now and who you work with and who you live around and who your kids play soccer with. God is moving in the hearts and lives of people. And if you want to move with Him, if your heart and focus goes, man, I'm interested in the spiritual well-being of these people around me, and if your heart is going to move with the heart of God, you just have to hold your schedule loosely. You just can't be one of those people who go, okay, I got the next 6 months planned out. Don't mess it up. It won't happen. You know, it just won't happen. Do your future plans have a footnote? The book of James addresses this very kind of in your face in James chapter 4. He says, now listen, you who say today or tomorrow, we're going to go this and do that and spend a year there and carry on business and make money. You know people like that? They got it all planned. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. James is talking about those kinds of people. He says, why, you don't even know what will happen tomorrow. You think you got your whole life planned out and all strategized? You don't control tomorrow. What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, what you ought to say, see, here's how you approach future plans. What you ought to say is, well, if the Lord wills, if it's the Lord's will. Now, you make plans. Paul made plans. He's making plans. Make plans. But they all have to have a footnote. You got to handle them a little loosely, right? Because if the Lord wills, we will live. I mean, there's a basic. You don't know what's tomorrow. You might die tomorrow. I visited a lady last week in the hospital, and she would be sitting right back there. I see the spot. There's a hole right there. And you ladies who sit around her know what I'm talking about. I went to visit her in the hospital. She wasn't feeling good. I don't know, Dan. I thought things were going well, getting past some other stuff she was dealing with, and I just wasn't feeling well. Went in the hospital. This test leads to this test, leads to this test, leads to this test. And she said, they're sending me to hospice. I'm leaving the hospital, and I'm moving into hospice. I have cancer, and there's no cure. She wasn't planning on that. What's your week look like? So I got my week all planned out. Okay, that's fine. See, if you're going to take a genuine spiritual interest in other people, God's moving, and if you're going to engage with the movements of God, you just have to hold your plans with a footnote. Well, if the Lord wills. And see, if you're the kind of person that your schedule and your plans are of greater interest to you than the spiritual welfare of people, it's just going to shut you down in this little confining, anal retentive world. Second question is do you have a list of others? Others. You know, Paul said, everyone looks out for his own interests, not those of Jesus. But Timothy's unique. He cares about and has a real interest in others and their spiritual welfare. Do you have a list of others? Do you have a list of people that you're to the place? It's so freeing. It's so freeing. You get to the place you say, yeah, there's a lot of people I think about. Or are they people you're trying to impress, or people you're trying to use or navigate or manipulate or whatever? You see their achievements and you go, wow, look what they do or whatever. Do you ever look past all of that stuff and say, wow, what a cool car they drive. Look where they live. Do you ever look past all that stuff and say, they have a soul? All those people have a soul. And I wonder what the spiritual condition of their heart is. Do you have a list of people that concerns you? That's of interest to you. Not in a stalking kind of way, because you really care for them. You really love them. Now, as you're thinking about your list, I would guess that it begins with your kids. You say, yeah, man, my kids, man. I'm thinking, okay, your grandkids, your spouse. Does the list go any further than your own family? Does your list go any further than your family? You know, as I was thinking about this and thinking about a guy like Timothy and thinking about this list of others thing, you know what I thought of? This place here at Grace is full of people. This place is full of people who have a list of others. This place is full of Timothys. And it blows me away. It's so exciting to watch this. I mean, last week, for example, you know, I was gone the week before and Youth Sunday, so it was great, man. I sat at Youth Sunday. I was challenged by that, fired up by that. Did you notice on Youth Sunday last week that at one point in the service they showed all these pictures of adults who are part of the youth staff? what you saw flashed across the screen, men and women, these were all Timothys who have a genuine interest in the spiritual welfare of the students in this church and in this community. These guys are amazing. Second hour, I got a chance to run around the place and look at all the ministry that goes on. And, people giving out donuts, people giving out coffee. They're served. They have a list of it. They care about you. They want to be guys out in the parking lot. They want to help you. They're your list of others. I went into the children's ministry. It moved me. Guys in the Cove. I didn't even think about it, but I went into the Cove in the nursery. I go, man, you guys are awesome. I look down, there's my granddaughter. And there's somebody loving on her. It's going, seriously, my granddaughter is on somebody else's others list. What does that mean to me? I went to children's ministries and like Power Up, Power Kids, going to Power Kids, and here's these adults sitting around on these teeny little chairs. I don't know how they got it. Teeny little kids' chairs, sitting down at these little tables and engaging with these children, right? Then I go to Power Up, and they had 75 kids at this part of the hour. They were breaking them down. They do full group things, and it's fun and high energy, and they break them down. Well, here's men sitting on the floor with all these boys, and women sitting on the floor with all these girls, and they had them break them down, all these groups. And who were these people? These were Timothys across the board who have a genuine spiritual interest in the spiritual welfare of your children and mine. That's amazing. I got emails this week about people wanting me to know about the typhoon that was coming to the Philippines. I heard about it from you before I saw it on the news. You know why? Because many of you have been to the Philippines, and when you heard about the typhoon coming, there were names and faces of people that you love. You're worried about Dan and Tori Beaver. You're worried about the IT people. You're worried about that First Love ministry in the building you had a part in, and those kids that got fed. What's going to happen to them? Man, be praying, be praying. Why? Because you have others on your list. Now, everybody's heard about the typhoon now, and they go, oh, that's too bad. But not with you, not with a number of you. You go, no, man, what are we going to do? These people are on your heart. They're on your list. Came across an Upward basketball coaches meeting this week. It's great. Ann and Chris and Harry, and they're all fired up. You know how many coaches do we need this year? 70, 72, somewhere in there, I guess. 70 coaches. I said, wow, because there's so many kids coming. He said, yeah, we only need about 4 or 5 more. I said, well, that's phenomenal. You mean there are that many people coming on a weeknight because the children in this community are on their list of others. That's tremendous. These are people of honor. I think about our ABF leaders here, about people on staff. I'm in staff meetings. I'm listening to our administrative assistants and the people we have on staff. Listen, there's a whole bunch of people on their list of others. You guys are in the prisons. There are people who meet with women in prison and get them Bibles and Bible study. There are men that are in the prisons every week in the county and over in Mansfield. Why are they doing that? Why are these people doing it? Because they have a genuine interest in the spiritual welfare of other people. That's tremendous. These are people worthy of honor. There's the Ashland Christian Health Center here in town that you guys are a part of. You're a part of the Pregnancy Center. You're a part of the Hunger Center. There's a meal here once a month on Sunday night. There's a group of people recently that are connecting with each other here at Grace because they have a heart for people in the community with disabilities, have a very difficult time connecting with church. And what do they care about? It's on their list of others. The food drive, you heard Ben Key talk about that this morning. That's great. Surviving the holidays. No, who put together a group like that? Well, somebody who's got a genuine interest in helping people spiritually walk through a difficult time. There's a number of you that recently are jumping into this English as a second language. Well, why are you doing that? Well, because you're genuinely interested in all the internationals who are here in Ashland and who don't know English. And so you're teaching them English and loving on them in Jesus' name and want to see them spiritually thrive as well as just learn English. That's awesome. So these are people who are on your list of others. You guys are amazing. The list goes on. The generations ministry, where older women mentor younger women. Why are you doing that? Because there are a whole group of women in this church who have a heart for the younger women in the church and seeing them navigate these younger years. And so I'll spend some time and energy because they're genuinely interested. It's an amazing thing. You guys are amazing. If you're sitting here going, wow, man, something's stirring in me, hook up with somebody around you. There's guaranteed to be people sitting around you who are, ask them. Just say, hey, who's on your list of others? What's going on? What's going on with that? In the board meetings I was coming out of the board meetings, and another guy that's on the Grace College board, I was walking with him to his car, and we were standing there. And I said, hey, Bill, I like your license plate. And here's what it was. That's his license plate. I said, what's the story behind that? What made his wife has one. Her car says, others one. So he and his wife both have license plates. And I said, what's the story behind that? Where'd that come from? He also serves on the National Salvation Army Board. And he said, Dan, I was in one meeting, and they told a story about William Booth, who was the founder. And one time at Christmas, he was old, he was later in his life, and, finances are tight, and he wanted to send out his annual message to all of his staff. All they had was telegraph back then, and every single letter cost you money. So he's wrestling through, what is it that I want to communicate as frugally and concisely as possible. And so he sent out a one-word telegram at Christmas. Others. And you honor people like that, who, like Timothy, had a genuine interest in the spiritual welfare of others. Paul has a second example. His second example is a guy named Epaphroditus. People don't name their kids that anymore. You run into a lot of Timothys, but no Epaphroditus. You guys could launch this one, right? Here it is, Philippians chapter 2. Let's read about the second guy. I think it's necessary to send back to you Epaphroditus, my brother, fellow worker, and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger, whom you sent to take care of my needs. He longs for all of you and is distressed because you heard he was ill. And he was ill. He almost died on me. But God had mercy on him, and not on him only, but also on me, to spare me sorrow upon sorrow. Therefore, I'm all the more eager to send him to you, so that when you see him again, you'll be glad, and I'll have a lot less anxiety. Welcome him in the Lord with great joy, and honor men like him. Honor men like him, because he almost died for the work of Christ, risking his life to make up for the help that you could not give me. Wow. So Epaphroditus was the guy there in the Philippian church, the people in Philippi hear that Paul's in prison in Rome. Lots of needs. When you're in prison in Rome at that time, you're not getting 3 squares, you're not getting any food, and you're not getting any cable, and you're not getting a lot of things, all right? And so they got to send it to him. And so the people in Philippi gathered this gift together, monetary stuff, and say, who are we going to send it with? Who's going to deliver it? And Epaphroditus says, I'll do it. Well, listen, this was not your, nice little safe missions trip here. He's taking this stuff. There's no armored guard. This isn't like, delivering flowers from the local florist. Now, some of you do that, and it's awesome. I'm not downscaling that, but I'm upscaling what Epaphroditus did. He's got to travel with this. It is dangerous. He's got to get to Rome and find him and deliver this monetary thing. How'd you like to be traveling? Hey, where are you going? What? And you got packed with all this stuff. And so he gets there and delivers it. While he's there and ministering to Paul, he gets sick. I don't know if he ate something, drank something, whatever it was. Maybe it's in prison. There wasn't a lot of health care. And so he comes down with something, starts to get sick. It's more than a cold. It's getting worse. Paul's going, he almost died on me here. But by God's mercy, he got spared. And I'm so excited. And so he sends him back. He's sending Epaphroditus back. By the way, with the letter, Epaphroditus was sent back with this letter to the church. And Paul says, honor guys like this. Man, he risked his life for the work of Christ. Here's a slide. You say, wow, do you know anybody like that? Let me tell you about these guys up here. Bottom left-hand corner, the couple on the bottom left-hand corner, that's Dr. Augustine Ibale. We support him. When you gave this morning, part of it goes to support this guy. He's in Bangui, the capital city in Central African Republic, and he works in this country. And what he's doing is taking the gospel of Christ and the fact that if you come to Christ, it ought to make a difference on Monday when you're a police officer, or on Wednesday if you're a government official, like how you do ethically and how you handle bribes and how you do things. And so that's what he does. That's what he does. He was involved with a number of police officers, government officials, and everything else. Well, then the coup happened. The rebels came from the north, fueled by Muslim money, come from the north, and ran the president and everybody out of the country. Huge upheaval. There's Dr. Ibale. Now, if you're smart, what are you going to do? Get out of Dodge. Anybody associated with the previous administration? Maybe you want to get out of Dodge. What did Dr. Ibale do? He travels to Spain or Portugal, I forget which country it was, goes through some international training about how to help countries when somebody comes in and a coup takes over. How do you help countries bring peace and stability and disarm and do whatever they're going to do? So he gets some training and goes back in, and he's engaging the next regime at risk to his life. The guy in the bottom right, he was here a few weeks ago. You see Joe Magalit. He was with us. He's the guy who's the president of all the churches in the Central African Republic, and many of his pastor friends, loved ones, and Grace Brethren churches at risk to their lives. Stories came out at risk to their lives. They're taking the work of Jesus Christ to the people. On the top, the guy on the left is Greg McFarlane. He goes to church here, and I don't want to talk about him. The guy on the right, the lady on the right is Janet Varner. And Greg was with a group of us that was in Africa a year or so ago, and it's where Janet Varner is. Janet Varner has been a missionary, single lady, for 40-plus years. Okay? When the coup happened in the Central African Republic, everybody had to get out because their lives, bullets are flying, rockets are flying. They had to get out of the country till it settled down. The second it started to settle down, Janet's back in. Well, it is still dangerous. A truck full of guys can pull up any time to Janet's house, cart her away, take everything she's got, and do whatever they want to her. And so they're going, Janet, why are you going back into the country? She loves the African people. She's concerned about their spiritual welfare. And so she's there. Well, Janet, what if you die? Janet smiles and goes, for me to live is Christ, to die is gain. You know what the mission agency is wrestling with right now? Whether or not to force Janet to leave the country or not. Go, what do we do? These are modern day Epaphroditus, and these are people deserving of great honor. A couple practical questions briefly related to this that we have to ask ourselves. One is this: who are you close to? Who are you close to? This work of Christ is carried out through relationships and people. When Paul says, this is my fellow worker, my fellow soldier, this isn't like kind of co-working, getting along at work and get the job done. Their lives are connected. There's a powerful connection that is taking place in the lives of the people in this passage. Paul writes, it's interesting, he says, I want to send Timothy to you so that he can bring back news to me. And what will happen? So that I also may be cheered. Well, Paul, I didn't know you cared that much. Yes, he cares about the people in Philippi. His life is connected. He's close to them. He led some of them to Christ. You bet he cares, right? Verse 22, he talks about his relationship with Timothy. But you know that Timothy has proved himself because as a son with his father, he has served with me in the work of the gospel. As a son with his father, whoa, there's a depth there. Paul and Timothy were close. Verse 25, he calls Epaphroditus my brother. Verse 26, he talks about Epaphroditus' relationship with the people back in Philippi. He says, for he longs for all of you and is distressed because you heard that he was ill. Did you get this? These people are connected. They're close. Paul says, Epaphroditus almost died, and I'm so thankful he didn't. What is it, verse 27? Because God had mercy on him, and not only him only, but on me, Paul said, to spare me sorrow upon sorrow. Sometimes when you hear somebody died, you go, oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. And other times when you hear somebody die, you experience sorrow upon sorrow. What's the difference? Depending how close you are to them. Depends how close you are, how intertwined your lives are together. These people's lives were intertwined. They were close in the work of Christ, and it was a powerful thing. They were connected. Charles Jones, I thought this was an interesting statement. He says, 5 years from now, you will be pretty much the same as you are today, except for two things: the books you read and the people you get close to. Who are you close to? Patrick Morley writes in his book called Man in the Mirror. It's a book for men. He said, I think most men could recruit 6 pallbearers, but hardly anyone has a friend he can call at 2 in the morning. Interesting challenge to men. Who are you close to? Second question we have to look at, I think, that's challenging to me and us is this. This one's very challenging to me. By the way, when I prepare these messages, they beat me up sometimes. You aware of that? It's like I sit down at the table like you and engage what God's saying and go, wow, man, this is challenging. So when I come and preach to you, it's like, okay, this is us together. That was just a sidelight. I don't know what made me say that, but that's the deal. And I get to this point and go, man, this is challenging. Here's the question. What are you willing to give so that others get the gospel? What am I willing to give so that others get the good news about Jesus Christ? Because here's Epaphroditus, verse 30. Because he almost died for the work of Christ, risking his life. Man, talk about skin in the game. What are you willing to give? Some people aren't willing to give an hour a week. Oh, man, I'm busy. An hour? 2 hours a quarter. What are you willing to give? Time? Your comfort? I don't know, man. Dan, you talk about like these guys were down on the floor with these kids? Yeah. I go in the nursery and pick a baby up. Blah, all the time. I got a nice outfit. Yeah, you might get a little, I don't know, man. What are you willing to give? Your luxuries, your managed schedule. How about your health? So many of you have been on short-term missions trips. It's not, it's different when we leave the U.S., isn't it? It's real different. And sometimes people go, man, I don't know, I could get sick. Yeah, you could. You willing to risk that? Back in 96, when they went to Cambodia, the government, everything's a little shaky. The Khmer Rouge, Pol Pot was still alive, living up in the north near the Thai border, and the country was a mess. But there was huge opportunities for the work of Christ. And somebody asked me if I go, okay, well then the mission writes, it gets a hold of me and says, by the way, we're going to purchase for you an evacuation medical policy. I said, what do you mean? Well, if you get hurt or something happens to you, they will helicopter you out of the country because there's no hospital in the country that you want to go to. And they'll take you to Bangkok. So that was what they did. So I go home and tell my wife, hey, by the way, this is a pretty cool deal. They're buying me an insurance policy. I can get a helicopter ride. And that's when she said, maybe you ought to call Dr. Snyder and have him go with you. And so that's what I did. I called Roger, and he went with me. And, hey, what are you willing to give? What are you willing to risk? You get sick? What are you willing to risk? What are you willing to give financially? How much? How much are you into? What are you willing to risk? What are you willing to give? And so you go, wow, a little bit of time, a little bit of comfort, a little bit of my schedule. What about my health? How about my money? Well, how much money? What are you willing to give to see the people get to work? How about your life, man? How about putting your life on the line? You're going, whoa, I'm challenged by those questions. Oh, I've had people threaten me, but nothing like this, nothing like this. Listen, to get others the gospel, I will just tell you, to get others the gospel, like Epaphroditus, it will result, if you sign in, say, wow, these are people of honor, I'm in. This stirs me. God's moving me. I'll just warn you ahead of time, it will result in sleepless nights, broken hearts, ridicule, risk. It'll scare you to death, weariness, a whole lot less me time. People go, I don't know, I have to have my me time. It'll cost you. And you have less money in your 401k. Now, people who are Epaphroditus types, guess what? When they get into it, they don't care about all those things that they have less of and they love. They don't care, because what happens is they meet the glory of the gospel advancing in what they know, the presence of Christ with them. Jesus said, go into all the world and I will be with you. They go, wow, this is amazing. This is amazing what God allows us to do. And there's a richness and a reward of being a part of the good news spreading that they don't care. It's not a sacrifice. See? How'd you like to live like that? How'd you like to experience that? Well, you sign up and be an Epaphroditus, risking his life for the work of Christ. This week, in my time, I have to have regular times when it's just me and Jesus and the Bible and the Word, separate from my sermon prep time, because I gotta feed my soul. I mean, I can't. And this week I just happen to be in Malachi. So I'm not. You say what? Don't worry. I'm not telling you I'm in Malachi to say, look how spiritual I am in the Old Testament. It's just I just read through the Bible and start over again in my time with Jesus. So I happen to be in Malachi. Okay, I came across this passage. It really moved me. God, through the prophet Malachi, is talking to the people, and he says, you know what? Your words have been hard against me, says the Lord. God says, listen, I listen to your conversations. I know what's going on in your heart and mind. And what you've been saying, it's hard on me. It's hard on me. But you say, what do you mean? What are you doing? Well, here's what you guys have said, God says. Here's what you're saying. It is vain to serve the Lord. Hey, it's whatever. Why do it? Why worth it? It's not worth it. Why make the sacrifice? It is vain to serve the Lord. What's the profit of our keeping his charge or walking his mourning before the Lord? So that's what the word on the street was. Man, I'm not going to get involved in that stuff. I'm not serving the Lord. But there were a group of people. There were a group of Timothys and Epaphroditus types that got together. And here's what happened. It says in Malachi, then those who feared the Lord, they spoke with one another. And I can imagine what that conversation was. They get together and say, do you think that way? They're going, heavens, no. I wouldn't trade this for the world. Man, I don't miss any of that money. I miss my time. Oh, the health, big deal. Yeah, check out the scar. What do you got, wimp? You know, these guys they spoke to one another, and the Lord paid attention and heard them. So here these Timothys and Epaphroditus around speaking to one another, and the Lord hears them talking. And a book of remembrance was written before God of those who feared the Lord and esteemed his name. Here's the deal. Your name and my name isn't going to show up in the book of Philippians. But God is writing another book. And many of your names are in it. You're in it. Hebrews 6, God's not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you've shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help them. And these are people who are worthy of honor. Who? Well, people like Timothy, who had a genuine interest in the spiritual welfare of other people. People like Epaphroditus was willing to even risk his life for the work of Christ. That's what I want to be like when I grow up. How about you? Father, take this passage and burn it into us. Pull us out of ourselves and up into this life with you. In Jesus' name we plead. Amen.